folks. It certainly has been quite a while, I'll say. Definitely been quite a while. I should probably get things set up here. First off, let's get rid of that bit. Well, there was a better screen I had. Was that it? No, no, that's not it. Was it this one? No. Ah, here we are. There we go. That seems like a much better background that we can use for this. Yeah, you can still send it, but I've temporarily paused any and all sound alert stuff. So once I reactivate them at the end, they will pop up. So, and if anyone donates points for sound alerts, again, I will use them at the end. So just take that into fair warning. But it's going to seem kind of depressing if I have just me talking with nothing else. So there we go. We'll have some music going on in the background, so that way it doesn't feel like complete silence and anything like that. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's just get right to the nitty gritty here. A lot has happened in, I'd say, the rest of my life, honestly, but the main chunk of what I've been going through lately is definitely roughly 2 months. A lot has happened. But I'll come to that when the time is right. So I feel like until we get to what happened then, it's only fair that I talk about myself as a human being living on this foreign realm that we all exist in. What do people call now that it was? Oh yeah, real life. It's funny being born the way I was, because coincidentally, my second eldest brother and I, you could say we are officially unofficial twins, because while he was busy celebrating his 5-year-old birthday at my grandma's, I was being born into the world, so that's definitely quite something there. But what truly set me apart from my brothers, let alone anyone else I would meet with in life, I was born with autism. Granted, I was higher functioning autism, but it took quite a while for me to finally get into the higher functioning. I know there's a word for it and all, but it's not popping in right now. Higher branch of them. I know that's not the word, but that's the first thing that popped in my head without wasting too much time. So, that alone makes me a minority in the group. And it didn't help growing up as a kid. I was typically the chunky boy. Yeah, I know my eldest brother is definitely a chunky one, especially growing up. I think he and I pretty much blew up at roughly the same time. Maybe into primary or elementary school. Definitely somewhere in junior high. It just started and just kept expanding. So that makes me even more of a target for people to pick on. So obviously, I didn't really have that many friends growing up. I'm sure people can say they know a handful of people who are greatly their friends. Growing up as a kid, I learned, rather than getting anyone and everyone to be my friend, I had to hand-pick certain ones, so that way I know I could be able to help them, and I know they would help me, and not just go turncoat at the end. So it was rough growing up. I'll say that much. It's been rough growing up. Especially when you were born and raised in a Christian family. Which, it's funny because my father, because his family was a Jewish family during World War II, cough ahem. Obviously, when my eldest brother and maybe second eldest brother were born, they were raised Jewish to begin with, but then my father later converted to Christianity. Don't necessarily know the full story, so we'll just save that for another time if it pops up. Point I'm trying to make is I've been trying my damnedest growing up as a kid to try and go through the honest to goodness Christian route. That can only get me so far in these rough times. So maybe I was able to keep it up during elementary school, maybe into junior high. By 8th grade, it's like, okay, I cannot keep this up. Either something has to change in me or I am going to get eaten alive in high school. So, I don't know. I guess even though I can't ignore the fact that I'm a Christian, I guess you could say technically now I think the term is called agnostic, where I still do believe in a higher power. It's just up in the air what said higher power might be. But yeah, it's a good thing that I did that, because I got the feeling I would get eaten alive in high school. That's an understatement. That's an understatement. High school was hell growing up. I absolutely hated high school. The only thing about high school that kept me going was music, because obviously I like to sing a whole bunch. Maybe playing an instrument. I used to play the trombone when I was late elementary, definitely junior high. Once I got into high school, I can only have time to do one or the other, so I gave up the trombone, joined a choir. That was really the only good thing I could say about high school. It was pain. Absolute pain to try and survive in there. And considering how heavy gun violence was on the rise during the late 1990s into early 2000s, yeah, I needed to graduate from high school as soon as possible, or at least stay on the main beaten path, because I remember when I was a senior in high school, I was so close to graduating. My guidance counselor told me I was one academic credit shy of doing so. And I thought, oh shit, I'm going to be held back a 5th year. So I had to make the ultimate sacrifice. Didn't have a lunch period. That was filled up for another class. I was starving by the time I got home. I was super tired during my classes. It was well worth it, because I still graduated by the time all of my other friends graduated, so I didn't feel like I was being left behind or anything. And I say music was the one thing that helped me get through high school. That wasn't necessarily untrue growing up at the high school I went to. Not just the music there, but also I was an avid gamer. Obviously, didn't have enough time to hang out with friends a lot, so obviously I grew up playing a whole bunch of RPGs, mainly the Final Fantasy series and Shining Force, Phantasy Star. You name them from a major video game console, I had those games, or at least played them a lot. Never played Broniac. Definitely heard of it, but never had the opportunity to buy any of that. But anyway, getting sidetracked because, like I said, um, growing up, I had a whole bunch of depression because obviously, when you're a teenager, thoughts of suicide pop in. And based on what I've seen from, I forgot what was the music video. There was a band that sang the song "Make It Stop." GOAT is short for Game of the Year, or wait, no, I'm thinking of greatest of all time. I don't know. I'm getting sidetracked. But yeah, I liked, yeah, Game of the Year, GOTY. That's the term. Getting back. Focus. Your typical teenager has depression and thoughts of suicide growing up. The one saving grace, have to pinpoint it on music. Music was the one thing that held me on and kept me going. And probably one of the greatest things I noticed was it wasn't just music or video game music. Because there was a turning point when I got to, I say college, it was mainly a junior college, where I started to come out of my shell. And mainly most of my other friends, like, not sure if Mob is in the chat or Goku8170, he would know best. He and I, along with a few other people within our clique, as it were, it truly made me embrace the gamer otaku that I am now. Oh yeah, there's Mob. Maybe I should say it 3 times. Goku8170, Goku8170, Goku8170. Damn, he's not right next to me. Oh well. Oh, that's the problem. I'm not in front of a mirror. I'm too lazy for that. Anyway, of course, you're not Beetlejuice. You're a Dark Overlord. Everyone knows that. Duh. Yes. Music was the one thing that held me together. Especially video game music, because not sure if anyone, let alone had a PS2, heard about a PS2 game from Koei called Kessen, which was basically a retelling of the Tokugawa regime, or the start of it, from the 1600s of feudal Japan. After learning about the story from that game, I suddenly realized it wasn't just music that saved my life. It wasn't just video game music that changed my life. It was Japanese. They saved my life, and I thought I need to do what I can to pay back for what I did. So that's what got me into learning Japanese. I say learning Japanese. I'm still a first-year student. What? I didn't say anything about that. But yes, I did learn the basics of how to speak Japanese. Like right now, it's 7:10. I could say konbanwa, which is good evening. Watashi no namae wa Eizen desu. So my name is Eizen. Dozo yoroshiku. Pleasure to meet you all. But yeah, that's the basic stuff. I also learned the history of Japan, and it's funny how much in common Americans have with Japan, because much like Americans, where their history began in England, it's funny how Japan's history actually started in China. So, who knows? Maybe the Japanese and Americans are more alike than we thought. But yeah, there were a whole bunch of things while growing up that really wasn't for me, especially when it comes to the jobs I had. And there were a lot of jobs I had. Some of them passable, many of them were bad, even flat out terrible. So I know the first job I ever had growing up in high school was working at a Chuck E. Cheese, where I was basically at the front, the opening of the place, where I checked everyone. A child with their parent had to stamp them with a number, make sure they were the right number, so that way they left with the same people. Um, did work on the game floor, not that often, but it was okay. You got to play some games just to make sure that they operated fine. Um, Used to work in the kitchen for a bit until I burned my hand for a brief moment. And it sucks when you're mainly right-handed and need to learn, oh shit, I gotta do all this stuff with my left hand because my two main fingers and thumb are swollen to the point where I can't grip anything without it stinging or possibly poking out and leaking pus everywhere. So yeah, fun times abound. And while we're on the subject of Chuck E. Cheese, I'll answer the question that is on everyone's mind at this point. You worked at a Chuck E. Cheese. Were you ever the big cheese himself? Yes. Yes, I was. And I'll tell you, the rumors about bratty little kids who find an excuse to kick them in the nuts, that myth is true. They do. And it sucked because unless you wanted to risk losing a job, you can't do anything back to them. Plus, you know, people who work at Walt Disney World with the suits and they wear a cool vest so that way they could be in there for hours and not worry about a thing. We had nothing of the sort. So at least for 2 hours, I can imagine the most. Probably minimal half an hour to 2 hours I had to be in that suit. It gets hot as hell. Especially gets hot as hell. So, I say that was a bad job. For my first job in high school, it wasn't necessarily that bad. I could have gone worse routes. Which was funny because when I went into college, one of the worst jobs I had was working at a Taco Bell. And when you're trying to lose weight and you have all of those greasy, fatty foods, like, I don't know if they have those, what were they called? Potato Fiesta, Thingamadoodles, Apple, what were they called? Empanadas, I think they were called. And obviously the tacos that had the fat in there that they didn't leak out. Yeah, it's hard to lose weight, especially when you're in college, and there's really no way how you can counteract the fat that's building up in your system. That was probably the second worst job I had, especially since I had to work in drive-thru all the time. And it's bad when someone doesn't get new brakes and you just hear a loud into your left ear to the point where all you can hear is nothing but a ringing and you can't hear a goddamn thing for a week. My God, that was probably the second worst job. Why only second worst job? Because I at least managed to stay there for a full year before I went to working at a Target, which honestly, it had its okay times. It had its stressful times. I was able to stay there for roughly 7 years. It was not that bad. It honestly wasn't that bad. Probably the second best job I had. If I was able to stay there for that long and not complain about much of anything. But because I had Social Security issues, because since I was born with autism, I technically qualified for getting Social Security. That was a bad idea. Because, let's just say, anyone who completed a course in college and needed student loans to do so, you not only need to pay back what you got from them for money, but you have to pay far, far extra. Imagine that, but you have to pay the government. And what sucks about this is that they tell you, oh yeah, you can still earn money, but here's the thing. We can still give you Social Security checks, which I don't know why you would still want to do that when I'm trying to get off of that system. Only you can earn X amount of money every month. You go over that limit, we take away your Social Security benefits, and you have to pay back every last cent. So now I'm thinking in my head, okay, let me get this straight. I want to pay back all the money that I do eventually. Considering I can barely support myself as it is, how can I do that if I'm barely getting any extra money just for myself? So I'm just stuck in this terrible loop. But yeah, because of that, that's why I had to quit working at a Target. And it was a damn shame too, because I actually did like working there. It had its ups and downs, but could have been worse. Having said that, I needed to find a new job, and there was no place that was willing to hire me except for a Dunkin' Donuts on a highway. It was a brand new place that was opening up. They needed new employees, so of course they would take me in. Fucking hated working there. Hate it. I mean, longest I worked was 6 months, not even a full year of being there. And let me tell you something. It's one thing if you like to sleep late. I had that mini benefit because sometimes when I worked at Target, maybe I worked in the afternoon, maybe I worked in the evening through closing. Not that big a deal because, you know, it gives me time to sleep at around 1, maybe 2 a.m. Wake up the next day feeling just fine. Dunkin' Donuts. I had to work the early morning shift. Roughly 4 a.m. to 10. Oh, it is such a pain having to deal with that. In fact, probably the most interesting customer I got was someone who just wanted a small coffee and a glazed donut. The way they described the glazed donut made us think, oh, they wanted a classic donut, because she said glazed. It's like, the fuck is a glazed donut? Maybe it's a classic donut? It's like, no, I want a glazed donut. It was awful, awful, awful. And for someone of my mental capabilities who couldn't handle any and all that stress, especially after the stress of Social Security, what have you, I had to leave there as soon as possible. So I was stuck in limbo yet again. That was until, I want to say it was roughly March, maybe April of 2018? Maybe 17. I already lost track of when it happened. I finally got to work at a school for kids ages 3 to 21 that were born with autism. And before moving forward, I should say this is the current job I have. It does get stressful at times, but it's a job. What job wouldn't be stressful at times? So can't do anything about that. Of all the jobs I had since I was in high school to now, easily this is the best job I could ever have. Especially being born with autism myself, it's a job that I hold very near and dear, close to my heart. So take that for what you will, I suppose. And it's funny that I mentioned a job close to my heart because then we come to, I want to say it was, I don't know if it was Memorial Day or Labor Day of 2019. I was doing my usual bit of mowing the lawn, but I had the hardest time trying to breathe, and I was wondering, why am I having trouble breathing? I mean, uh, this is just the same work as usual. Sure, it's hot outside. It's not like humid hot, so why am I having trouble? And my family initially thought, well, if it's trouble breathing, oh, you must have asthma. Well, that's okay. Your other siblings have asthma, so this would be no problem for you. Go into the doctor's office, about to do a stress test to see how well I'm doing, but then they mentioned, wait, do you feel any trouble breathing? When you do so, does it feel numb anywhere and such? And that's when a cardiologist comes by and says, you basically had a heart attack or a cardiac arrest. Something needs to be done. So it was then that I had to undergo cardiac surgery. Didn't really do much of anything. They just put through, I can't remember if it was my left or right leg, through my thigh. They had to snake their way through my blood vessels and implant a stent in my heart so I could breathe again. And it did the job. I'm able to breathe. I don't have asthma. Damn shame too. I was this close to learning out the secrets of using an inhaler. But then I had to go through I don't even know what's the appropriate name for that. Cardiac rehab, boot camp, what have you. And this went on from, it was a few months, I should say. Roughly, if it wasn't September, it was October up until late January, early February. And this is important because this happened up until 2020. And come March, we all know what happened in March of 2020. Not going to say what it is because it has been emphasized far too many times. So let's just smile, nod, and move on. Having said that, anyone who truly knows me knows I'm a pretty calm, cool, collected person. I never had any mental or emotional issues in the past. After my surgery, I started to get huge amounts of panic attacks. And I want to say I don't suffer heart issues per se, but let's just say if I'm suffering emotional stress, it does linger on every now and then. So, yeah, that's kind of hard trying to live life you want to, but then emotional stress holds you back and everything. And it all harkens back to when I was a teenager and wanted to commit suicide, which didn't help that whether it was directly from my family or branches off of my family tree, it always happened during late fall and winter. I mean, I would always describe that As a kid, winter was always my favorite. But then I learned how to drive and realized winter sucks, so now fall's my favorite. I mean, you don't have to, but pop quiz for those at home. Raise your hand if you felt the same way about the winter growing up as a teenager, and then realized once you were able to drive a car, yeah, winter kind of sucks. But back to the point I was trying to make. Winter and late fall, those were hard seasons for me because growing up as a kid, winter always sucked. I know my grandpa from my mother's side, who I wasn't necessarily close with, but close enough that I had some form of attachment to him, died when I was in junior high, so that was rough in its own right. While he was busy doing deck work, my uncle, again from my mother's side, passed away while working outside. Um, those of you who may not know me back from my YouTube Let's Play days, excuse me for a sec. Sorry about that. A little bit of interference there. I should mention before I move onward, I've been dealing with a bit of a sore throat. I actually did not go into work today because it was that bad. And I swear, if I had my microphone close to my door, my mother hasn't been doing so well. Because I know it's just a standard cough she gets every now and then. If anyone else heard it, you think she was a chain smoker because of how loud and how many times she could cough. But anyway, I get the feeling my heart condition, what have you, might be family related because almost everyone from my mother's side always died due to heart related failures. My grandpa, my uncle. Probably one of the biggest hits I ever suffered when it came to a death in the family was my father, because he grew up, or I say he grew up. Um, I think it was well known by the time he was in, or I was in junior high at the time. He had MS, which I think is muscular sclerosis, probably not the term I'm looking for, but we just refer to it as MS. It's one thing if it affects his body to the point where it feels like his hands, his legs were always felt numb and couldn't really feel much of anything. That's bad in its own right. He had the type of MS, or multiple sclerosis. That's the term I'm probably looking for. Thank you. He had the type that was that, but also crept into his brain. So it wasn't just affecting him physically, but mentally as well. I think to the point where we had to put him in a senior home for a brief moment. I don't know if it was more than 2 months until we pulled him back, because the only people he could recognize was his children, myself included. Not his own wife or mother, because he was under those stressful times. And then after his passing, oh, it really hit me hard. Super hard. To the point where, those who know me, I did 9 different playthroughs on the NES Mega Man games. Strictly Buster only, or in the case of 2, 3, and 4, Buster only as much as possible. Those runs were dedicated to his life because he was that much important to me. But it all harkens back to the emotional stress of the the death of those around me and how it affects my living. Because since I brought up how I lived in the past and brought us up to now, it's only appropriate that we talk about what happened 2 months ago. For those of you who aren't in a Discord server, I mentioned that one of the students that I was supposed to pick up from the bus stop left the bus and tried to run into the streets. Naturally, anyone who's smart would do what they can to catch the kid and prevent any possible injuries, disaster from there. Most of the treading from my shoe was smoothed out, and because of that, I ended up slipping on some snow and landed on my left arm. What do they call it? I think the official records called it a humerus contusion, humerus contusion on my left humerus. Because, that's why they call it a funny bone. It got to the point where I was just dealing with so much stress, trying to go from one health clinic just to get analyzed, saying they need my medical information and couldn't accept me. And then had to go to the one I usually go to. It was like, oh yeah, you don't need that medical information. We already have it on file. I was like, then why did I bother doing all that? God, I just want this to be over with so I can get back to work. Not gonna happen! Turns out I had to spend a month away from work. Which is a shame because you'd think there would be a student I could work with at home via Zoom. Not even that was available. So I had to wait until my arm was better before I could even get back to work. And for the most part, it is better. I say for the most part because I've lost the ability to stretch to a certain degree with my left arm. Like, probably the best example is if I have an itch on my back. If it's on my left shoulder blade, I can reach it with my right arm, no problem. If it's under my right shoulder blade, it is impossible for my left arm to reach it now because it just stings that badly. It's probably the one lingering injury that, unless there's a miracle way of how to fix it, probably gonna stay with me for the rest of my life at this point. But yeah, not being able to work when all I wanted to do was just interact with people at work and be with the kids and I guess make more money despite the whole Social Security issues and all. Couldn't even be able to do that, so it left me in a bit of a depressive slump. And then thinking back to all the hardships and deaths that I've had to deal with along with my family side, let's just say I was, emotionally speaking, a ticking time bomb. And I thought the best way of how to defuse it is to just quarantine myself, not just at home, but from those around me on social media. And I say social media, strictly Discord, because I don't use Facebook anymore, and the only time I would use Twitter was if I was doing the 4-Job Fiesta, which, even at this point, I'm not even sure if I'm going to do another one on stream, considering, number one, not a huge fan of Final Fantasy V. That's a discussion for another stream. I will get into that later. But I have my own personal reasons. PS1! Anyway, and number one. Number two, let's just say Elon Musk owning Twitter. Yeah, that alone just raises eyebrows, question marks, exclamation points, what have you around Twitter. So just leave that for what it is. Which, of course, brings me do this stream today. For the longest of times, I wanted to shut myself off from the world after my injury back in late January. I was able to work again in late February. It's roughly been a month since then, and physically speaking, emotionally speaking, I'm fine for now. I wouldn't be able to do the stream if I wasn't getting close to being emotionally fine. So, and I even on Steele's Discord server actually joined him and a couple of my other online friends for a chat. Hey, Negatron, what's up, dude? Actually joined them via voice chat just to test the water, see if anything worked. Nothing big happened, so if anything, this proves I am ready to get back into streaming, let alone chat-chitting with other people. I think that's how they say it. Was it chat-chitting or chit-chatting? No, it's chat-chitting. It's chat-chitting. That's definitely what it is. So, with that said, what does this mean for how I'm going to tackle the streams for now? I do have, it's choot-chitting. Oh, haven't heard that term before. Got to add that into my list. Choot-chatting. Okay, there we go. Anyway, what does this mean for how I'm going to tackle my streams for now? Next week is, for me anyway, spring break. So, next week, maybe into the weekend as well, or this weekend into next week, throughout the weekend. It's strictly going to be whatever I feel like streaming. The following week, whatever I had planned prior to the injury, that is going to be me getting back to my original schedule by then. So, what exactly do I have planned for next week? That's just games I feel like playing, so that's for me to figure out, you all to ponder about. I will say the next time you will see me in a stream, will be joining Jeff for his co-op play of Resident Evil Revelations. And I know some people are thinking, but you love the Resident Evil games, and last I checked, Revelations is a good game for the DS, let alone re-releases for other systems. Why is it you're not streaming that? Here's the thing. It's not that I don't want to stream it, but rather I don't want to stream it yet. Because anyone who remembers back in the month of October, a little event I like to call Spooktober, wink wink, nudge nudge. The last thing I did was a retrospective of the Resident Evil series, and currently I am on the OG Resident Evil 4, and according to the timeline, Revelations happens after the events of 4, so I need to finish 4, maybe even get the remake out of the way too, and then I will tackle Revelations on stream. So, at best, have to wait until Spooktober for me to do that. But, yeah, that's really all I have planned for next week into the following week. Let alone, that's all I have planned for this stream. I just wanted to share my inner thoughts with everyone and pour out my feelings for everyone, to let you know that I haven't quit Twitch. I just needed a much needed mental break, and I think it's time I finally came out of my break and get back to streaming. I think the soonest I might stream would be Saturday. Depends on whether or not I'm also helping Jeff tackle Xenogears, considering I have played it before, barely remember anything about it because it was a blind playthrough for me at the time. I don't know. Worst case scenario, he's most likely going to have Pan by his side to help him out. Who knows the game far better than I do. But now it's time for me to wonder, is there anyone on Twitch right now I can recommend you all to? Not that many names are popping up for me right now. I could give a few shout-outs, but there is one person in mind I am thinking about rating. So, first off, let's give some shout-outs here. We'll give a quick shout-out to Smite, who's playing Final Fantasy VIII. From what I can recall, it's his first time playing through it, so if you're a fan of Final Fantasy, something to look forward to. Speaking of things that are broken down, let alone RPGs of sorts, apparently Proton John is doing, what is it, a competitive race or something? He's playing Pokemon Scarlet or Violet. Not sure which of them it is, but let's just say broken games for a system that I don't think really can support the system. Or if it can, not as well as it should. But yeah. That's all I can think of at this point. What I will say, at the very least, is if you do want to support me, I guess you can give subs or just local donations of sorts. I do have a Patreon where if you want to ask me to do something, please feel free to do so. I would love to have direct donations to help me out, especially after the news of what I've heard with the deal that Twitch partners are getting right now. It was kind of floating about in the air. Nowadays, it's a definite given of what's going to happen at the time. But yeah, I think that's enough for the shoutouts. I do have a raid target, but first, just in case there were any alerts that went off, we should probably go ahead and get them out of the way, and I don't think it's going to play any right now. Nope, not going to play any. I know there was at least one. Yeah, Hydreigon resubbing for the 23rd month. Thank you very much for that. Truly appreciate that. Yeah, nothing else is really popping up. Okay. So with that said, we are going to go ahead and raid Psychedelic Eyeball. He is currently playing... What is he playing again? Alright, Apollo Justice, a.k.a. The Phoenix Wright series of Ace Attorney. No real raid message or any sorts. Just go say hi to him and everything of that bit. But yes, it has been a while since I've streamed on Twitch. I honestly can't wait to get back to streaming. But yeah, until then, folks, take care. And here's to hoping, if I do have to take a break, it's not necessarily going to be for that long. But yeah. See you all later then.